Hi guys, we continue our reading of the Annihilation of Caste speech by Ambedkar, trying to learn what he has suggested on how to tackle this problem. Hindus often complain of the isolation and exclusiveness of a gang or a clique and blame them for antisocial spirit. But they conveniently forget that this antisocial spirit is the worst feature of their own caste system. One caste enjoys a singing hymn of hate against another caste, as much as the Germans did in singing their hymn of hate against the English during the last war. The literature of the Hindus is full of caste genealogies in which an attempt is made to give a noble origin to one caste and an ignoble and an ignoble origin to other castes. The Sahyadri Khand is a notorious instance of this class of literature. This antisocial spirit is not confined to caste alone. It has gone deeper and has poisoned the mutual relations of the subcastes as well. In my province, the Golak Brahmins, Deorukha Brahmins, Karada Brahmins, Palshe Brahmins and Chitpavan Brahmins. Chitpavan Brahmins are the caste of Savarkar, and there was a mass genocide against Chitpavan Brahmins after Nathuram Godse killed Gandhi on the following weeks. And no one obviously knows about that because we had Marxist historians, and because Nathuram Godse was himself a Chitpavan Brahmin. And all congresses went and killed every Chitpavan Brahmin they found in Maharashtrian villages. All of these Brahmins claim to be subdivisions of the Brahmin caste. But the antisocial spirit that prevails between them is quite as marked and quite as virulent as the antisocial spirit that prevails between them and other non-Brahmin castes. There is nothing strange in this. An antisocial spirit is found wherever one group has interests of its own which shut it out from full interaction with other groups, so that its prevailing purpose is protection of what it has got. This antisocial spirit, this spirit of protecting its own interests, is as much a marked feature of the different castes in their isolation from one another as it is of nations in their own isolation. The Brahmin's primary concern is to protect quote-unquote his interest against those of the non-Brahmins, and the non-Brahmins' primary concern is to protect their interests against those of the Brahmins. The Hindus, therefore, are not merely an assortment of castes, but there are so many warring groups, each living for itself and for its selfish ideal. There is another feature of caste which is deplorable. The ancestors of the present-day English fought on one side or the other in the wars of the Roses and the Cromwellian War, but the descendants of those who fought on the one side do not bear any animosity, any grudge against the descendants of those who fought on the other side. The feud is forgotten. But the present-day non-Brahmins cannot forgive the present-day Brahmins for the insult their ancestors gave to Shivaji. The present-day Kayasthas will not forgive the present-day Brahmins for the infamy cast upon their forefathers by the forefathers of the latter. To what is this difference due? Obviously to the caste system. The existence of caste and caste consciousness has served to keep the memory of past feuds between castes green and has prevented solidarity. And I would argue, see how solidarity has been prevented also by caste-based politics, where every party had a caste-based candidate to represent just one caste of the location, and which has finally been gotten rid of only in Uttar Pradesh, because everyone has united as Hindus, and even Muslim vote has increased 7 to 8%, and it still festers in every alley of Bihar. Bihar hasn't still gotten out of caste politics, even though I heard the people want a Hindutva party, but all other parties are still encouraging caste-based politics. The recent discussion about the excluded and partially included areas has served to draw attention to the position of what are recalled the aboriginal tribes in India. They number about 13 million, if not more. Apart from the questions whether their exclusion from the new constitution is proper or improper, the fact still remains that these aborigines have remained in their primitive uncivilized state in a land which boasts of a civilization thousands of years old. Not only are they not civilized, but some of them follow pursuits which have led to their being classified as criminals. 13 millions of people living in the midst of civilization are still in a savage state, are leading the life of hereditary criminals. But the Hindus have never felt ashamed of it. This is a phenomenon which in my view is quite unparalleled. What is the cause of this shameful state of affairs? Why has no attempt been made to civilize these aborigines and to lead them to take to a more honorable way of making a living? Well, because Hindus are not like Christian missionaries. The Hindus will probably seek to account for this savage state of the Aborigines by attributing to them congenial stupidity. They will probably not admit that the Aborigines have remained savages because they had made no effort to civilize them, as they shouldn't. To give them medical aid, to reform them, to make them good citizens. Okay, out of the blue, Ambedkar seems to be a British colonializer. But supposing a Hindu wished to do what the Christian missionary is doing for these aborigines, could he have done it? I submit not. Civilizing the aborigines means adopting them as your own, living in their midst and cultivating fellow feeling, in short, loving them. How is it possible for a Hindu to do this? His whole life is one anxious effort to preserve his caste in his precious possession which he must save at any cost. He cannot consent to lose it by establishing contact with the aborigines, the remnants of the hateful Anadi as of the Vedic days. Not that a Hindu could not be taught the sense of duty to fallen humanity, but the trouble is that no amount of sense of duty can enable him to overcome his duty to preserve his caste. Caste is, therefore, the real explanation as to why the Hindu has let the savage remain a savage in the midst of his civilization, without blushing or without feeling any sense of remorse or repentance. The Hindu has not realized that these aborigines are a source of potential danger. If these savages remain savages, they may not do any harm to the Hindus, but if they are reclaimed by non-Hindus and converted to their faiths, they will swell the ranks of the enemies of the Hindus. If this happens, the Hindu will have to thank himself and his caste system. So he's saying, if you don't want Christian missionaries to convert them and use them against you, convert the fuck out of them, which is a very nuanced argument, but deserves some attention. Not only has the Hindu made no effort for the humanitarian cause of civilizing the savages, but the higher caste Hindus have deliberately prevented the lower castes who are within the pale of Hinduism from rising to the cultural level of higher castes. Yes, that they have done since 12 or 1300 AD. I will give two instances, one of the Sonars and the other of the Pathare Prabhus. Both are communities quite well known in Maharashtra. Like the rest of the communities desiring to raise their status, these two communities were at one time endeavoring to adopt some of the ways and habits of the Brahmins. The Sonars were styling themselves as Daivadnya Brahmins and were wearing their dhotis with folds on and using the word namaskar for salutation. Both the folded way of wearing the dhoti and the namaskar were special to the Brahmins. The Brahmins did not like this imitation and this attempt by Sonars to pass off as Brahmins. Under the authority of the Peshwas, the Brahmins successfully put down this attempt on the part of the Sonars to adopt the ways of the Brahmins. They even got the president of the councils of the East India Company's settlement in Bombay to issue a prohibitory order against the Sonars residing in Bombay. At one time, the Pathare Prabhus had widow remarriage as a custom of their caste, who were, by the way, Hindus. So you can never talk about Hindus in one sentence, painting them in one color. This custom of widow remarriage was later on looked upon as a mark of social inferiority by some members of the caste, especially because it was contrary to the custom prevalent among the Brahmins. With the object of raising the status of their community, some Pathare Prabhus sought to stop this practice of widow remarriage that was prevalent in their caste. The community was divided into two camps, one side of those in favor of widow remarriage and thus virtually prohibited the Pathare Prabhus from following the ways of the Brahmins. The Hindus criticized the Mohammedans for having spread their religion by the use of the sword. They also ridiculed Christianity on the score of the Inquisition. But really speaking, who is better and more worthy of our respect? The Mohammedans and Christians who attempted to thrust down the throats of unwilling persons what they regarded as necessary for their salvation? Or the Hindu who would not spread the light, who would endeavor to keep others in darkness, who would not consent to share his intellectual and social inheritance with those who are ready and willing to make it a part of their own makeup? Because now when we do this, it's called imposing our views. I have no hesitation in saying that if the Mohammedan has been cruel, the Hindu has been mean, and meanness is worse than cruelty. Good. I guess the Hindus are listening to Ambedkar more than Ambedkarites. Whether the Hindu religion was or was not a missionary religion has been a controversial issue. Some hold the view that it was never a missionary religion, others hold that it was. That the Hindu religion was once a missionary religion must be admitted. It could not have spread over the face of India if it was not a missionary religion. That today it is not a missionary religion is also a fact which must be accepted. The question therefore is not whether or not the Hindu religion was a missionary religion. The real question is, why did the Hindu religion cease to be a missionary religion? And there's another aspect, that how was the missionary Hindus going about doing it? Their way of converting people was through winning debates with the other religions or other faith systems, not by threatening them with the sword or offering them a bag of rice. My answer is this: Hindu religion ceased to be a missionary religion when the caste system grew up among the Hindus. Caste is inconsistent with conversion. Inculcation of beliefs and dogmas is not the only problem that is involved in conversion. To find a place for the convert in the social life of the community is another and a much more important problem that arises in connection with conversion. That problem is where to place the convert, in what caste. It is a problem which must baffle every Hindu wishing to make aliens converts to his religion. Unlike the club, the membership of a caste is not open to all and sundry. The law of castes confines its membership to person born in the caste. Castes are autonomous and there is no authority anywhere to compel a caste to admit a newcomer to its social life. Hindu society being a collection of castes and each caste being a closed corporation, there is no place for a convert. Thus, it is the caste which has prevented the Hindus from expanding and from absorbing other religious communities. So long as castes remain, Hindu religion cannot be made a missionary religion, and Shuddhi will be both a folly and futility. That doesn't explain then why is there casteism among converted Christians, and why do they still get the benefits of being a religious minority and a Dalit, and why do Christians and Muslims who converted from Brahmins treat evilly the people who converted from lower castes to Christianity and Islam. The reasons which have made Shuddhi impossible for Hindus are also responsible for making Sangathan impossible, even though Shuddhi was done by Arya Samaj and Savarkar. The idea underlying Sangathan is to remove the mind of the Hindu that timidity and cowardice which so painfully make him off from the Mohammedan and the Sikh, and which have led him to adopt the low ways of treachery and cunning for protecting himself. The question naturally arises, from where does the Sikh or the Mohammedan derive his strength which makes him brave and fearless? I am sure it is not due to relative superiority of physical strength, diet or drill. It is due to the strength arising out of the feeling that all Sikhs will come to the rescue of a Sikh when he is in danger, and that all Mohammedans will rush to save a Muslim if he is attacked. The Hindu can derive no such strength. He cannot feel assured that his fellows will come to help. Being one and fated to be alone, he remains powerless, develops timidity and cowardice, and in a fight surrenders or runs away. The Sikh as well as the Muslim stands fearless and gives battle because he knows that though one, he will not be alone. The presence of this belief in a person helps him to hold out, and the absence of it in the other makes him to give way. If you pursue this matter further and ask what it is that enables the Sikh and the Mohammedan to feel so assured, and why is the Hindu filled with such despair in the matter of help and assistance, you will find that the reasons for this difference lie in the difference in their associated mode of living. The associated mode of life practiced by the Sikhs and the Mohammedans produces fellow feeling or fraternity. The associated mode of life of the Hindus does not. Among Sikhs and Muslims, there is a social cement which makes them bhais or brothers. Among Hindus, there is no such cement, and one Hindu does not regard another Hindu as his bhai. This explains why a Sikh says and feels that one Sikh or one Khalsa is equal to sawa lakh, more than a lakh men. This explains why one Mohammedan is equal to a crowd of Hindus. This difference is undoubtedly a difference due to caste. So long as caste remains, there will be no Sangathan, and so long as there is no Sangathan, the Hindu will remain weak and meek. The Hindus claim to a very tolerant people. In my opinion, this is a mistake. On many occasions, they can be intolerant, and on some occasions they are tolerant, that is because they are too weak to oppose or too indifferent to oppose. Like Bengalis. This indifference of the Hindus has become so much a part of their nature that a Hindu will quite meekly tolerate an insult as well as a wrong. You see amongst them, to use the words of Morris, quote unquote, the quote begins, the great reading down the little, the strong beating down the weak, cruel men fearing not, kind men daring not, and wise men caring not. The quote ends. With the Hindu gods all forbearing, it is not difficult to imagine the pitiable condition of the wronged and the oppressed among the Hindus. Indifferentism is the worst kind of disease that can infect a people. What a beautiful line. Indifferentism is the worst kind of disease that can infect a people. Why is the Hindu so indifferent? This seems like an RSS fucking book. In my opinion, this indifferentism is the result of the caste system, which has made Sangathan and cooperation, even for a good cause, impossible, which RSS has worked against for their entire lives. The assertion by the individual of his own opinions and beliefs, his own independence and interest as over against group standards, group authority and group interests, is the beginning of all reform. But whether the reform will continue depends upon what scope the group affords for such individual assertion. If the group is tolerant and fair-minded in dealing with such individuals, they will continue to assert and in the end succeed in converting their fellows. On the other hand, if the group is intolerant and does not bother about the means it adopts to stifle such individuals, they will perish and the reform will die out. Now, a caste has an unquestioned right to excommunicate any man who is guilty of breaking the rules of the caste, and when it is realized that excommunication involves a complete cessor of social intercourse, it will be agreed that as a form of punishment, there is really little to choose between excommunication and death. No wonder individual Hindus have not had the courage to assert their independence by breaking the barriers of caste. It is true that man cannot get on with his fellows, but it is also true that he cannot do without them. He would like to have the society of his fellows on his terms. If he cannot get it on his terms, then he will be ready to have it on any terms, even amounting to complete surrender. This is because he cannot do without society. A caste is ever ready to take advantage of the helplessness of a man and insist upon complete conformity to its code in letter and in spirit. A caste can easily organize itself into a conspiracy to make the life of a reformer hell. And if a conspiracy is a crime, I do not understand why such a nefarious act as an attempt to excommunicate a person for daring to act contrary to the rules of caste should not be made an offense punishable by law. But as it is, even law gives each caste the autonomy to regulate its membership and punish dissenters with excommunication. Caste in the hands of the orthodox has been a powerful weapon for persecuting the reforms and for killing all reform. The effect of castes on the ethics of the Hindus is simply deplorable. Caste has killed public spirit. Caste has destroyed the sense of public charity. Caste has made public opinion impossible. A Hindu's public is his caste. His responsibility is only to his caste. His loyalty is restricted only to his caste. Virtue has become caste-ridden and morality has become caste-bound. There is no sympathy to the deserving. There is no appreciation of the meritorious. There is no charity to the needy. Suffering as such calls for no response. There is charity, but it begins with the caste and ends with the caste. There is sympathy, but not for men of other caste. Would a Hindu acknowledge and follow the leadership of a great and good man? The case of a Mahatma apart, the answer must be that he will follow a leader if he is a man of his caste. A Brahman will follow a leader only if he is a Brahmin, a Kayastha if he is a Kayastha, and so on. The capacity to appreciate merits in a man from his caste does not exist in a Hindu. There is appreciation of virtue, but only when the man is a fellow casteman. The whole morality is as bad as tribal morality. My caste man, right or wrong, my caste man, good or bad. It is not a case of standing by virtue and not standing by. It is not a case of standing by virtue and not standing by vice. It is a case of standing or not standing by the caste. Have not Hindus committed treason against their country in the interests of their caste? I would not be surprised if some of you have grown weary listening to this tiresome tale of the sad effects which caste has produced. There is nothing new in it. I will therefore turn to the constructive side of the problem. This is why we love Ambedkar. What is your ideal society if you do not want caste is a question that is bound to be asked by you. That is bound to be asked of you. If you ask me, my ideal would be a society based on liberty, equality and fraternity. And why not? What objection can there be to fraternity? I cannot imagine any. An ideal society should be mobile, should be full of channels for conveying a change taking place in one part to other parts. In an ideal society, there should be many interests consciously communicated and shared. There should be varied and free points of contact with other modes of association. In other words, there must be social endosmosis. I don't know what this word means, but I guess some kind of social cohesion. This is fraternity, which is only another name for democracy. Democracy is not merely a form of government. It is primarily a mode of associated living, of conjoint communicated experience. It is essentially an attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow men. Any objection to liberty? Few object to liberty. Few object to liberty in the sense of a right to free movement, in the sense of a right to life and limb. There is no objection to liberty in the sense of a right to property, tools and materials as being necessary for earning a living to keep the body in due state of health. Why not allow liberty to benefit by an effective and competent use of a person's powers? The supporters of caste who would allow liberty in the sense of a right to life, limb and property would not readily consent to liberty in this sense, inasmuch as it involves liberty to choose one's profession. But to object to this kind of liberty is to perpetuate slavery. For slavery does not merely mean a legalized form of subjection. It means a state of society in which some men are forced to accept from other a society in which some men are forced to accept from other the purposes which control their conduct. This condition obtains even where there is no slavery in the legal sense. It is found where, as in the caste system, some persons are compelled to carry on certain prescribed callings which are not of their choice, birth-based caste system. Any objection to equality? This has obviously been the most contentious part of the slogan of the French Revolution. The objections to equality may be sound, and one may have to admit that all men are not equal. But what of that? Equality may be a fiction, but nonetheless one must accept it as the governing principle. A man's power is dependent upon A. Physical heredity, B. Social inheritance or endowment in the form of parental care, education, accumulation of scientific knowledge, everything which enables him to be more efficient than the savage, and finally C. On his own efforts. In all these three respects, men are undoubtedly unequal. But the question is, shall we treat them as unequal because they are unequal? This is a question which the opponents of equality must answer. From the standpoint of the individualist, it may be just to treat men unequally so far as their efforts are unequal. It may be desirable to give us much incentive as possible to the full development of everyone's powers. But what would happen if men were treated unequally as they are in the first two respects? It is obvious that those individuals also in whose favor there is birth, education, family, name, business connections and inherited wealth would be selected in the race. But selection under such circumstances would not be a selection of the able. It would be the selection of the privileged. The reason, therefore, which forces that in the third respect we should treat men unequally, demands that in the first two respects we should treat men as equally as possible. On the other hand, it can be urged that if it is good for the social body to get the most out of its members, it can get most out of them only by making them equal as far as possible at the very start of the race. Not at the end of the race, which is where there's a basic difference between free market thinkers and socialists. Because Ambedkar is talking about equality of opportunity. Socialists of the current generation are talking about equality of outcome. No matter what you perform in the race, you have to be given the first prize. That is one, or everyone has to be given the first prize, which happens in California. Everyone gets a 9th place, 10th place trophy. In kids' baseball and football and soccer matches, scoring is not allowed because apparently it hurts the kids' feelings. That is one reason why we cannot escape equality. But there is another reason why we must accept equality. A statesman is concerned with vast numbers of people. He has neither the time nor the knowledge to draw fine distinctions and to treat each equitably, that is, according to need or according to capacity. However desirable or reasonable and equitable treatment of men may be, humanity is not capable of assortment and classification. The statesman, therefore, must follow some rough and steady rule. And that rough and steady rule is to treat all men alike, not because they are alike, but because classification and assortment is impossible. The doctrine of equality is glaringly fallacious, but taking all in all, it is the only way a statesman can proceed in politics, which is a severely practical affair and which demands a severely practical test.